This week we shiver each other's timbers, attempt to become civil engineers, overcome the black lung, use more Q words than ever before, realize we are both grown children, and proto the crap out of our spiel. This and much more on this exciting episode of Rolling Doubles Podcast. Welcome to Rolling Doubles, a podcast about two board game enthusiasts who have never met and roll the dice on friendship. I'm Jacob, draw me like one of your French girls, Russell.
And I'm cold, Ryan Schneider.
It's so cold.
It's so cold. It's like -2 degrees outside in Minnesota right now.
It was probably cold for those people on the Titanic as well.
Extremely cold, yeah. I can relate. Kind of. I can totally relate. We actually will have events in Minnesota where people will voluntarily jump into a cold lake.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they do it for funsies. Whereas the Titanic, they did not do it for funsies.
Have you seen, there's an inflatable toy of the Titanic and you slide down it? I don't know if that's real. It was on the internet, so it has to be. That has to be a gag, right?
Oh my god! Wow, that's awful. Do you ever?
Anyway,
what? Do you think there's a Titanic board game out there?
Ooh.
So kind of there is, right? And this really interesting. Not specifically, but the new Mansions of Madness expansion, Horrific Journeys, is literally you're in a sinking ship, and you're having to go your way up. So. I mean, kind of, but it's not like physically Titanic, the board game.
Titanic, the board game. No. Oh, hold on. No, there totally is. It's a card game, and it has a book that opens.
You're lying.
No, I think this is right.
You're lying.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to look this up. To the Board Game Geek. Yeah, I'm going to look this up. We are going to edit out the time it takes.
There's plenty of Titanic games, actually. You don't need to edit this out because I've literally typed in Titanic and there came 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there's so many of them.
Hold on. Have we had this conversation already about Titanic board games?
No.
We did this exact same thing. What was that one?
No, you're having deja vu, man. You're having deja vu.
It means we are doing the right thing.
We are doing the right thing.
It means we are on the right path. And the right path of talking about board games. I'm actually super excited about this episode. I think we have some very fun games we're going to talk about today.
A lot of fun games that we both played that we're ready to talk about. So let's start with you. Tell me.
All right, I'll start.
Talk to me.
I'll talk to you. I'll talk at you. I'm going to talk to you about Rum and Bones, Second Tide. I have a very fond a fond history of this game. I had the first edition of Rum and Bones. I did not back it. I actually won it in a competition. So CMON used to have a podcast with these two dudes, and I think I was one of the 5 people who listened to it. I don't know, but I loved it. It was awesome. Anyway, they ran a contest. I won this game and a couple other games, and I was thrilled. So I played Rum and Bones, the first edition, and I absolutely loved it. Super fun. I'm not going to talk about the first edition. I'm going to talk about the second edition because it is even better. So what this is, it is a supposed to emulate like a MOBA game where there are guys just kind of on a line going towards the center thing, and then you're controlling heroes. And so that's what it's kind of emulating. And I've actually never played those kind of games like League of Legends or others. But what this is each faction, each player plays a faction, and you are trying to get the most points. It's first to 8 points wins. 8 points? 10 points? It's a certain amount of points. It's not a lot of points. But you each have a ship, and you are controlling a hero, and you bring them out onto the ships, and you're jumping from ship to ship, and each hero has their own abilities. So think of these ships as a grid, right? They're big ships, but they do have spaces. And there are 3 specific spaces on here where your crew spawn on, and your heroes will spawn on, and they will spawn there, and then your crew will just go in a line towards the other ship. And those you don't control. All you do is you control when they actually activate. Your heroes, on the other hand, get a certain amount of actions each turn, and they can do different things. Each hero is completely different. They have different abilities, but essentially they will attack by rolling dice. They will have other abilities that are specific to them. Each faction is completely different. Each ship has different objectives on them, and those could be like the mast or the deck gun or something else that your opponent can come and attack, and those give them points and also coins. Coins are used to upgrade your heroes, so your heroes all have upgradable abilities that you can decide to spend those coins on so they can become stronger over the course of the game. And that's how you get points, and you get points by also killing a hero on the other team as well. So it plays super quick back and forth. The changes from the first to the second are amazing. In the first edition, on your turn, you would play every hero of yours, and you have about 3 heroes, 3 or 4 heroes, and then you would also activate your deck gun and your crew all at once, and then it'd be the other person's turn. So a turn could take like 10 minutes, and that's not even an exaggeration. It just takes a long time to kind of manage all that. But in this one, they alternated it where you activate a hero, then your opponent activates a hero, and you go back and forth until everything's been activated. And they added the upgradable abilities, and it's just fantastic. It's not a heavy game at all, and it does take a long time. It takes us about probably 2 hours to play a full game, and it's also one of those games where it could be 6 months before I play it again, but I don't have to read the rules again. It's pretty straightforward. And I love how CMON does their little like rule summary on the back of their books, and they work just wonderfully. And it's fun to just have these big ships, these amazing miniatures. I think between the base game, I did kickstart the second tide, and I got a couple of the expansions with it. So I think I have a total of like 6 or 8 different crews that you can play, and they're all super different. Some crews or some factions have like 1 big ship, some have 2 smaller ships, or some have like 3 super small ships, and so they're all different orientations of what you're playing. I've only played 2-player. You technically can play up to 6, where you're playing on teams of 3. I don't think that would be as fun, but as a 2-player game, it's just a quick back and forth, and you're just engaged for that all that time. And it's, man, I just love it every time I play it. And when I haven't played it in a while, I get jonesing to play it.
Sure.
So it's just super fun. I don't know if you've seen this or had any experience with it.
I've seen it. I've attempted to back it. Never do. So I'm curious, like you said that turns take like 10 minutes to play, but you said it's fast. Like,
sorry, in the first edition they did, because you're playing all of your heroes all at once.
Sure.
And then you also your deck, but in this one it's more back and forth, and so your turns are super quick.
Why couldn't you house rule it where in the first edition you could just go back and forth between each hero, or is there something that doesn't allow that?
Actually, that's a good question. I don't think there was anything that didn't allow that. But I didn't even think about that in the first edition. I probably only played the first edition twice before the second one was on Kickstarter. And I do a thing where if there's like a new edition or a new version of the game coming out, I don't play the original, even if I have it, until the new one comes out, just to kind of have like that's kind of what's probably going to happen with Root, where I'm probably not going to play it again until the expansion comes out this year sometime, or next year, or whenever.
Yeah.
And so that way, when it does come out, it's going to feel like a new game again. So I don't remember a ton of the first one. I just know that this is significantly better.
Yeah, looking at the componentry, again, CMON never fails to be able to just have the production quality on the miniatures, the illustrations, everything is top notch. It's really curious in terms of there hasn't. What other games are like very MOBA-esque?
So when this one came out, there were actually a couple more that were out on Kickstarter. I know one got canceled, but there are others that are trying to do this same thing. I kind of felt like Mechs vs. Minions was kind of similar, where it just had these small bad guys just kind of automated their movement, right? And you're controlling the heroes going around it.
Yeah, a little bit.
And that's a stretch. But I don't think I've played anything else kind of like that.
Have you ever heard of ELO Darkness?
No. What's that?
That was a Kickstarter 2 years ago, back in 2017. That was a combination of like Magic the Gathering and like a MOBA game, which I had my eye on. I ended up not backing it just because I was like in that phase where I'd like back so much and I was like, all right, I got to cut back. It actually looks like it's delivering to backers this month. So it's been a whole process. It must have hit some delays the estimated delivery was May 2018 and it's now January 2019. They're starting to deliver it. But I mean, it's Kickstarter, it happens. But
That's true.
It looks like that's a game in which involves a lot of cars instead of miniatures to be able to play in a very MOBA-esque like boardscape that I'm looking at right now. So that's pretty interesting if you're in that type of sphere. But I just want to say, as far as like outside of CMON, I can't think. I mean, it's very distinctive with the lanes that you have your top lane, mid lane, and bottom lane essentially. And, with everybody having their own unique set of powers and the minions that kind of just go straight in there and don't really do anything. Yeah. Looks like, I'm just surprised with how popular they still are. It doesn't seem like there hasn't been too many people in a mainstream board gaming publishing culture to produce something more like that, to my knowledge. But hey, it's all good. Rum and Bones scenes, again, it's just it's cool that they decided to go with the pirate theme versus the good old fantasy theme. That makes things really interesting and things. But yeah,
and it works. I feel like every time I play a different faction, they feel super different. Every faction also has a deck of cards that you can play called the Tide deck. And you get like a hand of those, and they just do different things, and they trigger at different times, like if you're being attacked or if you're attacking or if something happens on the board, or it's just things that kind of change things up as well. So really each faction does feel completely different. And I actually do this Darkness game from Kickstarter. I remember that when it was on Kickstarter, just from looking at that box cover.
Yeah,
so that one does look cool as well.
Yeah, ELO Darkness, game by Roxley Games. And it has this really big like knight with gold armor holding a broadsword kind of charging at you, looking all intense. It was the illustration stuck out. Like it definitely has shelf presence in in a shelf for selling at a store. Definitely would want to see what it's more about. Both these games look like dope though. I don't know if I'd buy them just for the pure sake of how much money it is. I imagine CMON, you're looking at least 60, 70, 80 bucks. But I definitely would give it a shot if, we ever were to meet one day.
One day. That's funny. A buddy of mine just asked me if we were ever going to meet, and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I have no idea. Yeah, who knows? I wonder if that would take kind of the charm out of this a tiny bit. Like, it's like this weird like air of mystery.
Two passionate board gamers who met one time, and then we realized that the spark wasn't there anymore.
Well, we decided we had a good run.
Yeah, and we decided right there that it just wasn't meant to be anymore. Shook hands, and now we're doing nothing.
Oh, that's really funny. Anyway, highly recommend Rum and Bones, Second Tide by CMON. What have you been playing?
The game that I want to be able to talk about is a game that I've had since after Gen Con last year, and I just got around to playing it this past weekend, and that game is Welcome To. Welcome To is a flip and write, I think is what it's called. Not a roll and write, it's a flip and write. So let me explain. Welcome To is a game published by Deepwater Games. The designer is Benoit Turpin, with the artistry done by Anne Heideseek. So in Welcome To, you are an architect of a neighborhood, and your objective is to be able to make your neighborhood like the most successful neighborhood in all of the land. So you get a sheet that has this neighborhood and 3 different streets or lanes, each having like a house that has yet to be occupied. And then you have a big deck of cards. And in this big deck of cards, you separate them into 3 separate decks of 27 cards each. And on one side is going to be a number from 1 to 15. And on the flip side of that is going to be 1 to 6 different types of actions that you can take. So what's really interesting about it is each turn, these 3 decks are going to flip over one by one. And on the top of the deck, of every 3 decks, there's going to be a number. And then of what's flipped over is going to be the action paired with the card that it was flipped over. So you're going to have like these pairs of cards that are connected. And so you play until a series of different endgame conditions are triggered. So, for instance, if you're able to complete all the 3 schematics that are listed at the top, which are just basically like these very specific long goals in terms of being able to create like a 3 estate, and a 4 estate kind of pair, what have you, or there's different varieties. We only did like the first tier of different end game conditions, so they were pretty simple. You get points listed off them that you mark down on your sheet. And just quickly going back here, if you guys don't really know what I'm talking about here, we're talking about like the recent like roll and write Yahtzee craze that's been going on. Specifically, Ganz Schon's Clever, that's really clever in German, has been super popular last year in 2018, where you roll some dice and you kind of pick and choose in terms of what you feel has the most points given that specific roll, and you just keep rolling until you hit these endgame conditions, and then you score up your points, and whoever has the most points wins. Well, and again, like in this game with Welcome to, you're doing the same thing, but with a deck of cards instead. So that's the kind of twist on that whole take. And there are many other companies now that are doing their own types of roll and writes, flip and writes. So many different ones. It's ridiculous. So there's different types of actions you can take, like building fences, being able to like populate pools for extra points, raising real estate for more points, being able to, so each time you choose a pair, there's a number, and all numbers have to go left to right from lowest to highest. And so sometimes if you want to be able to have a similar number on a street, you have to use the BIS, like mailbox action, in order to do that, but you lose a point. And then there's like one other thing that you can do: real estate, pools. It's like the warning construction sign. You can kind of modify the card that you're given, the actual like number, like up to 0, 1, or 2, up or down. So you can kind of modify that as you see fit. And so, yeah, the game ends. It's really easy. You can play from 1 to 100 as long as everyone has access to see these cards in about 20 to 30 minutes. And everyone loves it. I loved it. My wife loved it. My friend and I loved it. It's just the hype is real when it came to this game. They just recently had a Kickstarter, Deepwater, for a second printing and some additional neighborhoods. It's pretty sweet. It's a lot of fun.
I still have not ventured into the world of roll and write. Now, I do have that one. Hold on, what's it called? It's the one with the wooden dice. Roll Through the Ages.
Yep. Sure.
And I love that one. That's like I've had that one for a few years, and I dig it. I haven't played in a long time, and so I've been hearing about all these, and I think they would just they would fit well with family. I think when I take games over to play with family, I think they would work super well. I just haven't done one yet, and this one just sounds like it would be perfect for that.
Yeah, when you get into it, it takes being able to. So the player aids that they give you have a lot of symbology to them, and the symbology doesn't necessarily click until you have someone that either has played the game a lot that can kind of simplify it to you, because once you get it, you never need that thing. You never need the player aid again, because you just end up inherently knowing what it does, because you're playing these actions upwards of probably 20 times before the game ends, so you kind of get a sense of how each action works with each pair. But yeah, it's a little intense, and people in my first game, even myself, felt a little like not confident about how I was playing or whether I was doing it right. But then eventually, like, you start getting going in that latter half of the first game, and you're like, oh, there's something to this, and yeah, like, I didn't understand it when I was at Origins. Like, it was super popular. People were waiting in lines for it. Even prior to people even going into the show, like, vendors were waiting in line to get a copy of the game. Like, it was that popular. And I was like, I don't get this. Like, it's not my thing. But after playing it, I see it. Super cheap. Like, you can print it off online, laminating it. It's the hype is real. Believe it. It's with these expansions and new different neighborhoods, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. People are going to keep dipping back into time and time and again. It's definitely its own unique thing, and I strongly recommend getting a game of Welcome to in if you can.
That's sweet. Yeah, I'll try it out. Cool. That's awesome. That's welcome to by Deepwater Games.
Indeed.
I forgot to say the designer of my game.
Michael
It's
Chanel?
Michael. Yeah, it's him. If you were wondering.
Hey, if you were to name, so you don't necessarily need to play the game, but you can name your town. You can name your little neighborhood. What would you name your neighborhood?
Oh man. See, every time I do this, every time I name things, I always go to poop jokes like I'm a child.
This is weird because it's poop related. My town.
Okay, what's yours?
Welcome to Butt. And then when I played my second game, this Welcome to Butt 2. And it's just going to continue to go until it's like Welcome to Butt 24.
The 10th one will be Butt X.
Yeah, Butt X. Oh, it should be in Roman numerals. This is great.
Yes,
it has a little bit more impact.
I'm such a child when it comes to that. Like in Charterstone, you name your visitors or whatever, and they all just had fart jokes in them. Like I can't grow up out of that. Fart jokes are always funny. I'm a 34-year-old child.
Congratulate. I don't know what to say to you about that.
Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that either.
Especially after I named my town Butt. Like there's no I can't check you on that. Like we're both like just naive idiots.
Oh, it's so good.
Oh my god.
All right, one game I've been playing lately is Brass Lancashire. Now, we've talked about this back in episode 7, which was our Isaac Vega episode, so we talked about it real quick, and I hadn't played it yet, so I would like to give my perspective on it, and I'm assuming we have a few more listeners from then, so I'm going to talk about this game. All right, I have zero experience with the history of Brass. I've never played it up until this version. I saw the Kickstarter that Roxley did a while ago. Roxley. I don't know if you heard I said that. Roxley.
You've been on a Roxley slide recently with Dice Throne last episode. We have Brass Lancashire this one. Yeah, you're a little Roxley fanboy along with CMON.
I get, CMON hardcore.
Yes.
Oh, it's so good. So this one.
If they made a Roxley CMON crossover, would you just literally die?
I think like something would burst out of my chest, like that alien would just burst out of my chest with just how excited I would be. I know that doesn't really make sense, but that's what I would feel. Well, I kind of feel that right now just thinking about that.
I kind of figured what would happen is that your wallet from your back pocket would start shaking and it would literally rip out of your back pocket, and then the credit card would, like, as a shuriken, go into the credit card slider and just immediately max out.
It just
for everything that CMON Roxley crossover would provide.
I wasn't a big Roxley fan up until the now. What's funny is I have Santorini. I have the Kickstarter version of that.
Santorini's so good.
It's so good. This I was actually I regretted not backing this version of Brass. I was going to get both of them. I just liked the art, honestly, and I know Brass had history, and I love when games get a refresh or like a more modern design applied to them, so that was exciting as well, but I just ended up not backing it. I don't remember why. I just, honestly, I think Feudum was around the same time.
Yeah, that's about right.
I only need one heavy game, but luckily, my buddy Logan, who is a fellow board game connoisseur, he backed both of them, and he heard me talk about this on a previous episode and offered to sell me his copy of Lancashire because he liked Birmingham better. And I was like, okay, I'll buy that from you. And I threw money at him, and he gave it to me.
Like physically, you like took wads of cash and just threw it at his face?
Chucked it at his face.
Nice.
Yeah. And so I bought it from him, and he's like, hey, I'm sorry I punched it out, but it hasn't been played. And I was like, I don't care one bit. You could have played this 20 times. And it's in like mint perfect condition in like these thick plastic bags, and he's apologizing for it. It was great. Good. He's a good dude. Yeah.
Well, it's really impressive finding people in our hobby. We just take excellent care of our games in general.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's why I have no problem buying used, just because people will play it once, sell it for like $20 cheaper. I got a copy of Wendake, that Native American game by by Renegade, for like $35. from they sold it to a half price books, and sometimes you can get some really decent deals from half price books because people will just turn it in. That game MSRPs for $65. I got it for $30, baby.
That's amazing.
Anyways, back on track. Let's talk about Brass Lancashire.
Oh yeah. So I brought this home because I knew that my wife would like it. And spoiler alert, she totally did.
Excellent.
And oh man, okay. So in Brass, I don't know if you have, if you guys don't have a knowledge of Brass, here's what Brass is. Basically, you have a map in front of you, and you have a deck of cards, and the cards correlate to either a location or a resource, and that resource also correlates to spots in a location, and you are trying to build up these locations with either cotton mills. Or I'm just gonna fumble through this because it's actually a pretty complicated game. So cotton mills, or you can build coal mines,
ports.
or ports,
Yep.
or things that make iron.
Yep.
And the whole game, or links between the two.
Mm-hmm.
The whole game is divided in half. The first half is canals based on water.
Yep.
That's what a canal is. If you didn't know what a canal is, you're now educated about that. Or the second half is then where the trains come in with the rails. And the first half of the game, you're building up, and then you score your links and you score buildings and other things. But then the board kind of gets reset a tiny bit if you played, I guess, not well, because that's what happened to us. And all the links come off. Everything that you score comes off. Buildings have different tiers, 1 through 4. All tier 1 buildings come off, and you're just kind of starting from scratch. And then you build up again, and you have income, but the game is so scarce with income. At least it was for us the first time we played in the first half. So we played this game a couple times. The first time was a learning game, and we did terrible.
Mm-hmm.
We just had no idea how to build. We had no idea how to manage resources. There are times when you need coal to build, and the place that you're building has to be connected to coal. It doesn't have to be yours, just someone's coal. Or there has to be iron on the board that you have to use as well. And so you're using each other's resources on the board, which does potentially give the other people points. But then there's the second half when things are even more expensive. So the second time we played, we got into the second half of the game, and we're like, our income is terrible. How are we going to afford these things? And then it just ramped up, and our income shot up as we were playing, and it just became this incredible puzzle you're trying to figure out, because there's a balance you're trying to find of building your own buildings to get points without having to give benefit to the other player while playing these cards. The cards help you build in specific locations if you're not connected to them. So there are also resources or cards that are resources that let you build in specific locations as well if you are connected to them. So it's just all this really interesting card play as well. And it's hard to explain because I've never played anything like this. Now, I've played a Martin Wallace game before. I have played Mythotopia once, which was a fantastic game, but that is on my to-sell shelf. Is
Railroads of the World.
I was just going to ask. That's right behind me. That's probably my favorite train game.
Yep.
And that's also him. But this game is just completely different from anything else I've ever played, and it was amazing. I could not stop thinking about this game. We are going to play it again tomorrow night. We already have our next date night game selected because we're trying to play games multiple times in a row so we don't forget them.
Mm-hmm.
And she definitely wants to play this game again. It is so good. I have no desire to play Birmingham, even if it may be better to some people.
Sure.
I just really, really love this one. Now, I know you have experience with this one,
Yep.
and you also dig it, right?
Yeah, I do. I dig it a lot. Pro tip, don't be afraid to take loans. Don't be afraid to take loans.
Yeah. And that's true. And that's one thing we learned after the first game. I was so afraid to take loans.
Yep.
Because like in Railways of the World, loans are just so hard to deal with. But in this, like, it's really not, especially later in the game when your income's pretty high and you can afford to take loans. It's, yeah. I think that's the one thing I learned going from game to game.
One of the things that I was fond with Brass is that you end up finding yourself being like the coal or iron baron just innately as you play the game, because you end up realizing that when you start seeing a need and you go for it, or you had like a foothold in it, sometimes for me, I always felt like I wanted to go all in on it. And that made me feel important. That made me feel like being the controller of iron and you needing iron, I felt like, in a position of power, and that made me feel good. So that's a really fun thing that the game does, that if you decide to go into it, there's definitely some benefits to it, but also at the same time too, other people can come in and put a little competition towards you, and there really isn't much you could do about it. But did you just play this game 2-player?
I did. I would love to play it more, because at 2 players, it cuts off the top two regions, I guess is what they are, colors of areas.
Yep.
So I think that would definitely be more interesting. Actually, I'm not sure if it would be more interesting. I think it would be a different type of interesting, because having 2 players, like, you're just trying to go after each other, and I think that there's a lot of fun in that.
Yeah, at 3 or 4, I would recommend playing it with an additional 2 people. It adds a lot more dynamic. And that's where, when I talked about being the coal baron, the iron baron, the market baron, or whatever, you start solidifying those roles, and then you end up realizing that, like, while you are leveraging this one resource really well, it's like, oh, I still need to sell things, and someone has already cornered the market on the ports, and then you're just like, for being able to sell that, like, that gives my opponents things, but then if I sell it to, the general market, that's where that whole track. Remember that track for the market where you end up selling too many things and it ticks down and then eventually isn't worth anything? Yeah. That's where Birmingham comes in and, makes that all, they redact all of that and they just say, okay, someone now controls beer and the beer is what the market becomes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that's what that, they end up taking that, because that's a really kind of weird random element that the game offers, that I could see why you would want to replace that with something more that a player could control. Mm-hmm. So
I loved it though. So good.
I'm glad to hear. I love Lancashire too. I could do both at any time, but I'm a Lancashire guy. So yeah,
that's awesome. That is Brass Lancashire. I don't know what status it is, if it's available for retail or not. It's been out for a while to Kickstarters, so
yeah, you could maybe get lucky and find a retail printing, but it's really hard when you know that the clay chips are in the game.
Oh my gosh.
The clay chips add such a good just value to playing the game that it's hard to ever not play with them. I wouldn't be surprised if it's on like a second printing, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised.
Have you noticed the clay chips that come in the box? Is that enough for a 4-player game?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Because you just trade up for the denomination higher as you start getting more money. Yeah, it should work. Cool. Yeah. So
they sell that chest of only the clay tokens, and like a lot of them. Well, they did at one point. I think they're impossible to find now. But man,
yeah,
I want to.
If you wanted to play them with other games, they offered them just for simply the fact that you have extras. But the one the Kickstarter version, I think just will work for up to the player limit, so no need to worry about that if that's the one you got. So
awesome. That is Brass Lancashire by Martin Wallace and Roxley Games.
The last game that I want to be able to talk about today is a game that I heard about at PAX U last year. Maybe it was around a little bit before or after, I'm not really sure, but this is a bag building, pushing your luck game called the Quacks of Quedlinberg. Quacks of Quedlinberg is a game by Wolfgang Warsch. That actually legitimately scared me.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Like, I wasn't expecting it, because it was like it was a duck, but also like a farty duck.
He ate a really gassy duck.
No kidding,
he
right?
became gassy himself. Sorry, that was a childish quack joke. Go on.
You're fine. Wolfgang Warsch, as people might know, is very popular for games such as The Mind, Illusion, and I don't think Quixo. No, not Quixo. The other one I'm thinking of is Bricks. Bricks is the game that Kate King in our interview podcast talked about, where you're basically playing analog Tetris with dice, and you're like putting the cubes in certain places and erasing it as you go. So go figure, it's freaking Tetris on a piece of paper. Alas, Wolfgang Warsch has now broken into the big box stratosphere of board games by offering this bag building, pushing your luck game where you are a quack doctor who, in this town of Quedlinberg, they host a 9-day festival in which all of these rare ingredients are available to purchase. And then once you purchase all of your ingredients, you go back home and you start building this potion by just randomly pulling crap out of your bag and throwing it into a pot. And you have to be careful, though, because if you mix in too many ingredients that would conflict with each other or get to a certain point, your potion will explode, basically shooting up in your face, and your potion is ruined. And you have to wait until the next day to go back and either take victory points that you had accumulated or going back and buying more ingredients and trying your luck the next day to get more points. So again, after 9 days, whoever has the most points wins. So, yeah, basically the entire game there's like 7 phases through it. It's with how it works, but the game is really simple in that simultaneously players will reach into this nice, opaque bag and pull out an ingredient, and from the middle of their pot they have like a little droplet that signifies where they start, and then they're kind of moving in this swirling pattern up this specific track, and you will pull a number value for an ingredient, either 1, 2, or was it 1, 2, or 4? I think 1, 2, 3, or 4. I forget. There's different ingredients do different things. And every time you pull out an ingredient, it has this number, and you kind of skip the amount of spaces that you placed last time. So if you have a 2 from the droplet, you go 1, 2 spaces out, place your ingredient there. Then you draw your next bag, and maybe it's just a 1. So you count from where your last ingredient was, count 1 space, put your ingredient there. And so there's this very specific white ingredient that if you pull out a combined value in your pot of more than 7, so 7 would be your limit, but more than 7, your potion explodes and you're basically done. And you have to basically figure out from that point what was the highest scoring value or victory points that you have, and you have to make a decision on what you decide to do. But if you don't explode, if you stop, you are able to accumulate both. And you get to roll a die, and you get to do all sorts of fun things to see if there is any specific ingredient that does a special ability. So you can have things like if you pulled out like a black ingredient, you would be able to match to see how many other people also drew black ingredients. And if you have the most, you get to move your droplet up 1, and you get this little ruby that allows you to do special things with, like refreshing your potion or being able to move your droplet up 1 to kind of have you start farther up this track. The game is very variable in that each ingredient kind of has these different stages. So there's like 1 of 4 different chapters or books or complexity levels that it offers. So you can kind of mix and match, which makes it really interesting. So as you start playing this game more and more, you can start improving some of the ingredients and being able to add more complexity and more rules and more things that it does, which can make comboing a lot of fun too. My only gripe with this game is one thing, is that it's much more of a multiplayer solitaire game than I expected, in that I wanted it to be a little bit more interaction with the game somehow. But what ends up happening is that you're just kind of always looking at the other player's potion and just seeing whether or not you want to continue to push your luck. You really can't do anything that impacts other people's potions, which, when I think about it, might not be a good idea, because I think too much take that would not make this game fun. I was surprised that there wasn't more interaction, but that didn't make the game not fun. I still enjoyed myself immensely. We played like 3 or 4 games of this. It runs really quick. It like takes an hour, but that hour goes by so fast, and it is filled with a lot of fun for every single minute that you play. And I think it's another hit by Wolfgang Warsch. This guy can't seem to do any wrong, I feel like, with the games that we've been seeing from America. He's been doing a great job. And if you guys see Quacks out there, pick it up. It's like $40, I think, $35-$40, depending on which venue you decide to get it on. But a lot of people can play. It's a nice kind of fun, refreshing theme that I don't think is done a lot. And yeah, you can get, I think, anybody to play, and it'll be a good time.
It looks fantastic. I am super intrigued by this game, mainly because I think I am a closet gambling addict, closet gambler, closet addict of gambling.
Sure.
What's the right way to say that? Anyway, I like gambling. Like, okay, I don't know if you've ever played Ink and Gold.
I've heard about Ink and Gold,
Yeah,
but it's
so just your like super straightforward push your luck, but I always try and push it so much where I always lose that game. Not always, but most of the time, because I always try and like get as much as I can without busting. And this game, I think I would love just that push your luck element. And at first I was like, I wonder if that how random I guess the game could be, if that could hinder it, but I don't think it would, because of that push your luck aspect. That just sounds like a good old time.
And the different ingredients you can buy kind of interact with each other. Like there was an orange ingredient, which are like pumpkins, and there was like a red mushroom in that. For each pumpkin that you had put out into your potion, if you then pull a red mushroom, you get the value listed on the mushroom plus X for the amount of pumpkins that are out there. So you have this strategy of being able to be like, oh, I'm going to buy a pumpkin and I'm going to buy a mushroom, and maybe keep buying pumpkins so that like every single mushroom you play, red mushroom, is just going to net you that farther. Like you get that combo going that feels good. Or there's like a blue bird skull, and that the bird blue skull allows you to take the value of it, and then you get to draw like 1 to 2 to even 4 different types of chips in your bag and be able to choose one, throw the rest back. So like if you pull out a 4 bird token or for a 4 bird chip, move your token 4 spaces, pull out the next 4, and then you get another 4 blue token, then you're just doing, like, you went up 8 spaces, and that feels so good. Like, that whole comboing system just makes that so satisfying. And again, too, it's really simple to get into. Like, the rules aren't all that hard to really disseminate. It's a good, simple bag builder game that I just really enjoyed myself a lot while playing. Strongly recommend it. Yeah.
That's awesome. I dig it.
Quacks.
Quack.
Quack.
Quack. The Flying V.
Yeah, Flying V. Of Quedlinberg by North Star Games.
You did something very exciting lately.
I did.
You went to Protospiel in the mecca of board game land.
Minnesota.
In Minnesota, I know. Hey, I'm sure there's other things in Minnesota, right?
Mall of America.
Mall of America.
Mall of America,
yes.
And craft beer. That's all we got up here.
That's
literally. And board games. Like, too many board games, actually. Enough to make a fort out of.
Well, there are so many board games out there that you guys have conventions about things that aren't even board games yet.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Tell us about it. For those of us who have no idea what Protospiel is, including myself, who have only had vague mentions of it, what is Protospiel?
Protospiel Minnesota is an event held every year for the last couple of years, I feel, at the beginning of January, where game designers will bring their unpublished designs to a Best Western by the Mall of America and find a table, set everything up, and invite players to come and play test their game for them. There is another event that I think is a little bit more popular called Unpub. Unpub is an event or a group that's run by volunteers. I'm not actually quite certain with Unpub as a group, but I'm aware that they run very similar events where you register with them, you bring your game, and you set up at a table space, and people are allowed to venture in and be like, hey, this game looks cool, and you get to sit down and play this unpublished game that maybe one day is picked up by a publisher. So it's like browsing the news section of Reddit, essentially, and just seeing what are the current, like, ideas that are going through people's heads. for those that haven't seen it on our social media, we are actually a proud sponsor this year of Protospiel Minnesota. And I was there actually with a design myself that I was testing out. The game's called Hidden Paths. It's an abstract pathfinding game. And I came with my wife and a friend of mine and my developer, and we sat down and ran some demos. So to kind of get a sense of what Protospiel is like, or an unpub, you sit down, you register, you set everything up, and some people bring like signs, other people bring like just handmade signs. It's very kind of casual in that way, and it doesn't take too long for people to just kind of come up to you and be like, hey, what's this? Let's sit down and play. And you provide a demo. Most of the componentry is going to be either from like places manufactured from the Game Crafter, which is a very popular United States board game prototype manufacturer, where you get to go online through their website, submit some files, and they will be able to, at a price, be able to send you some fairly, more high quality componentry for your game to get it visualized better for you. People can have games on, just handmade paper. A lot of it's hand drawn. There's a lot of handmade things done by people too, and a lot of high quality stuff, like things that are literally very close to being done that people bring. But the one thing is for certain is that nothing has been published. Everything is not signed by any specific publisher or kickstarted. It's all very much in the process of being tested. And so what's really interesting about this is you start giving demos. What designers are looking for is feedback. And there's a good and bad thing about feedback when it comes to these types of events. Good thing is that you get this game out in front of more people and you start to notice things that you have initial concerns about, that you take note of, that gives you good information as far as what you can do better as a designer to help fix and make that a much better experience for the player. The other, concern about that is that if you aren't specific with the type of feedback you're looking for, the game tester hat can be placed on people and you kind of get a wild, broad spectrum of feedback that isn't useful for you. So, for instance, my game's a 2-player competitive puzzle game, and the artwork that I have for it is this kind of watercolor, digital, mysterious, mystical forest thing. And someone thought that it might be better as a co-op game. And I was like, well, sure, maybe, but it's not. It's this, and it's not. That's not really useful kind of feedback. It's kind of. I'm glad that's their interpretation of it, because that's always going to be useful to understand, when they view a product, what rings in their head. But to have it be a co-op game is not something that I was interested in. But that's cool and that's fine. Other things, people won't like a certain mechanic. People won't sometimes won't like the art or the idea of what you're trying to convey. If it was poorly taught, I don't know what it would be, but you can tend to be really all over the place with people. Everybody has their own specific way of how a game should be and it should play. And so it really comes down to taking notes and just being very letting it all sink in, not really trying to make knee-jerk reactions, right? Because really, it's not a matter of this one player saying hey, this thing doesn't really work as it should. You don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to change that right away because it makes sense to you. Let that sit. Let that sink in. Is that really what you want to have it be changed just based upon one guy's feedback, right? One person's feedback. But there's just so many different awesome people that were there. And for instance, the designer of Codename Duels, I think, was there, who's a Minnesota native who played Codename so much and there wasn't really any good 2-player rules. And he was like, hey, I have this idea for Codename's 2 players. Here you go. And they're like, how about we just make this a game instead? So now Scott Eaton is the designer of Codename duets or duels, I think. I don't know.
Duet, yeah.
Yeah, like that's a really neat thing. And Marcus Ross, who does some kind of cool party games, was there. I met him last year, but not this year, unfortunately. Jeff Tidball, who's part of the board game sphere, is there for Atlas. Jay Little, who did X-Wing, was there. A lot of cool people, a lot of industry people. If you want to go and just network, like spend the $10 to be a game tester the entire weekend and just hang out with these people. Like they're like, if you really want to get into the scene, that's where people are going to be. People from Leader Games were there too that came over. Just a lot of great people that are just there to just hang out, talk, and provide feedback, and just making something as best as they can as far as the designer wants to take it, you know?
Yeah. Oh man, that sounds cool. Were you able to play any other games? Any other people's games?
Not this year, no. I only went one day. I only went one day this year, and it was literally demo after demo after demo after demo, like to the point where I got there at 8 a.m. and then the next thing I know, my wife's like, so we're going to get Chipotle. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's only like 10 a.m. I look at my clock and it's noon. I was like, oh my gosh, like it went by so fast. But I do remember playing games more last year. So I'd like to share some examples of what I played last year.
Yeah.
So one game that stuck out to me, and I can't remember the name, but it was this little cute dice game where it had all different types of D6s, like D8s, D10s, D12s, D20s, etc. And you rolled them, and you were supposed to like stack the biggest tower that you could, like playing these cards to alter the different dice rolls. So like from like lowest to highest or highest to lowest or something. And you made this like cute little dice tower, that I found really intriguing. And so you were like fighting with the person to try to make the tallest tower. And I found it to be extremely enjoyable and because don't we all as board gamers innately do that with just everything that's around us? Like,
oh yeah,
someone made a game out of it. That's pretty cool.
I mean, who hasn't stuck all their pieces from like playing Catan, and you take your houses and your rows and you build little things with them as you're like waiting for your turn.
Right.
I do that.
Right. It's like someone took that idea and kind of gamified it. Yeah. I played a game where someone adapted like the Elder Sign mechanics into a game about like GTA. Like there was like a bank robbery thing, so it was a little bit more complicated. Like they kind of gamified Elder Sign a little bit more, but they kind of themed it into a bank like heist. Robbery heist scenario, which was pretty cool. Yeah. One of the other, let's see, I actually remember this one. The one game I played was an area control game that you attacked by playing Rochambeau.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that was actually like you attack with like rock paper scissors. Okay, yeah, like whatever, dude. We played it and it was not bad. Like it was like okay,
that's really
like,
funny.
It was like it was half decent. But there is one game that was by far my most favorite that I actually think Scott Eaton, who did Codenames, did. Mm-hmm. It was a game about. Oh my God. I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, can't realize that this is going to be like the third or fourth instance that we're talking about farts. But it's this game where all he did was like he took a standard like playing card and he like folded it so that it could like stand. Mm-hmm. And it was like a game about wafting farts and how you played cards that like made you do different kind of farts. So like you took this card, so like you had like this little emperor guy or something like that, and you had like these two shield people that you can put in front of your emperor, and what you were trying to do was knock your opponent's emperor down. So you had to kind of like strategically place your little cards standing up so that they would block other people's like wafting farts. And so like you'd play this card from your hand to do like a big waft, and so you'd take your emperor and you'd like choose a player, and through like a certain distance, you would like take the card and just do like one single like hands down like woof like that to just get like this waft of air that would like try to knock down everybody's thing. It was like I've never laughed so much in my life. Like it was such a cute little game. And like the rules were super simple. Like his execution of how he described it was just the best. For like $10-15 I'd almost just get it for the pure just like not insanity, but just how gimmicky, like just a silly ass gimmick. Like it was just like a fun little, like that's the kind of thing that you can find at these sort of things, is just these really stupid ideas, really simple ideas that turn out to just like culminate like a fascinating 15 to 30 minutes worth of fun to something you would never expected. It's a fun time.
Okay, so overall this year, do you think you had a good experience, that it was actually worth something to you?
Absolutely, I would say so. Because again, what I ended up getting a lot of is that I came into Protospiel really having questions in my head about whether players would understand certain mechanics and rules, and having a time frame set in terms of turn order or turn amount of turns, that if a player didn't get it by like turn 2 or 3, there was something wrong with either what I was describing or what was on the card. Yeah. And so from there, I was able to kind of make a mental capture for every player and gauge their, like, it seems kind of weird, but like gauge their energy and interest level as we explain the game. And after like turn 3, I usually do a check-in and be like, hey, what do you think of it? Like, we could just end it if you aren't having fun, or we can continue with it. And it was like about half and half. I've had some people be like, I get it, because that's what as much as my game would offer. But I've had some people finish them out after another like 3 turns. And so in all, it seemed like people really enjoyed the premise of what I was doing, and I really have a firm sense of what I could do better to make the game much more visually enticing in terms of having people understand it after turn 1 or turn 2 versus many people grasping it after turn 3 and turn 4. I really wanted to reduce that. And so there will be a lot of things in this next upcoming version that I think will improve on those things, and we'll have a much more successful time as I take it around to local gaming stores and be able to test it with the local people there and build a community and see where it goes. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Now they do these around the whole country, right? I think there's either Protospiel or Unpub. They're in multiple locations. It's not just in Minnesota.
Yeah, Chicago, Milwaukee. In like another huge mecca for it, I think, is like in Indiana. Ohio, like they're also very popular there too. If you go on Facebook and follow them, like Unpub also goes to a lot of the different board gaming conventions. So you'll find them at PAX, you'll find them at Gen Con, those types of areas. Like they'll always have like a side room that they rent, and you'll find them. It's like the like Clippy. Like it always reminds me of Clippy.
From Microsoft.
That's funny. From their mascot, it kind of reminds me of Clippy. So if you Google for it, it isn't too hard to end up finding yourself nearby one if you're ever interested in wanting to play test, or to just be like you have an idea and just have it written down. Yeah,
that's interesting. I have a couple of friends who have brought over prototypes of games that we've played, and I always love the passion that people have about the games that they're designing. I've never had that desire to do a game or anything like that. I've had like ideas here and there that would be fun, but I've never wanted to put the effort into it. So I'm glad that there's people who actually do, because then I get to play them later.
There you go.
It's fun to see that process. And I would love to know what published games we have today that came from something like a Protospiel or an Unpub or something like that.
I could tell you one for sure.
Yeah,
there's so do you know who Gil Hova is?
I do not.
Gil Hova runs Ludo something or other, Ludography. I forget. He has a very, I think, well-known board gaming podcast that he hosts with other board game community members. And
is it Ludology?
Ludology, yes.
That one? Yeah.
Yep. And he made the networks. He made He made the networks, and he made Wordsy. Do you know Wordsy?
Mm-hmm.
He was in the Unpub room trying out this game called High Rise, and it will be coming to Kickstarter on February 4th. So yeah, so like at Origins, he was playing it, and literally he had like a piece of, just a giant piece of paper that looked like he had done it on, I don't know, Adobe very roughly, and he had some like very cheap plastic towers, and he was making like, like if you think of a game like Expand City or games where you kind of stack things on top of another, like it was very much this like game where you're building buildings. And I remember that in particular just because I remember meeting Gil at Origins, and he was there at the Udpump room, and now it's going to be a fruition thing that comes out on February 4th, which will be exciting to see. So
that's super cool.
It's just interesting to see what'll come from there. I think there's a lot of games that came on Kickstarter that are pretty popular that will come out of these things. So it's just fun because who knows, you might be able to get the first try of a version of a game that ends up being super popular. That's the fun in it all. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Well, that sounds like a fun experience. I'm excited to see what comes from that. And it actually sounds like something you'll probably do every year at this point, right?
Yeah, I think so. As long as we're still a thing, I think Rolling Doubles will probably end up sponsoring the event moving forward. So
that's the language of hope that I like to hear.
Maybe if this is still a thing,
if we decide to still do this, it's like, well, it's because we're going to meet each other and be like, well, yeah, it's fun.
That sucks now. It's like when your parents get on Facebook, like you don't want to do it anymore.
Like, well, that was fun while it lasted.
It's like, oh god, it's so cool. Like we have to do another thing. Like we're gonna like make a zine together afterwards.
Like after this,
after this, it's like no more podcasting. Podcasting is dumb. Let's just make a zine where we do board games reviews and like poetry.
Poetry. Oh, that like hand drawn comics,
hand drawn comics.
That's like photocopied.
Rising Sun, really Area Control, Betray Me. Like, it's just like...
Oh, that was the worst haiku I've ever heard.
Exactly, right?
Oh, well, good. Well, it's awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to say about that?
About Protospiel?
No, about our zine. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, Protospiel.
What would be the name of our zine?
Rolling Triples. No.
Yeah, that doesn't go off the tongue that well. Rolling Triples.
No, it doesn't. Okay, the name of our board game zine would be Thin Cardboard. No, because it's like a piece of paper. That was really stupid. I don't know. It's late. We are recording this really late.
It's like almost midnight for me.
It is. I think it's when it's time to wrap this puppy up.
Yeah, we're a little bit under time. We usually roll around like an hour 20. This is like just a touch over an hour.
It felt natural to me, baby.
It did feel natural.
Oh, was that creepy to you as it was to me? I saw myself say...
As soon as you said that, I think if you just omitted the baby part, it would have been fine.
It's like that. There's a webcomic about how they're naming spiders, and one scientist is like, let's call it long legs, and the other scientist is like, that's not kinky enough. Let's name it Daddy Long Legs. Oh my God. It's so stupid.
Also, I'm sorry if I'm like being somewhat quiet. My wife's sleeping across the hallway. Normally,
it sounds so boring.
I could yell usually in my downstairs basement hole. I can't do that anymore.
It's all right. We'll record earlier when she's awake next time.
Yeah, well, part of this reason too is because this last Wednesday we had our interview with Brad Andres up, which is exciting. Did you ever get to listen to it, by the way?
I have just started today. It popped up on my next. I just finished. Yes, I've started it. Is what I'm saying.
You didn't finish it though.
No, not yet.
God, you're a terrible person, or you're terrible. No. You're a terrible podcast host.
Hold on. Yeah, you're probably
right. So for those that are just listening, this past Wednesday, which is going to be, oddly enough, my birthday, which was the release of that podcast, which I kind of wanted to have happen, but so here's the deal. Like, Fantasy Flight PR needed to sign off on it, and I did not know when they would sign off on it. It could have been like still in the queue. Who knows? And I was just like, that's why I told you, I was like, I really wanted to still record a podcast, which is why we did it on Friday. And then literally the next day after I asked you, I got a message and they're like, yep, PR signed off on it. And I was like, oh, well, I had an idea of wanting to have it be like the January interview that we did. So I wanted to release it this week. So it's out there. It's live. It did really well on our Twitters and our Instas.
So good.
Yeah, so good.
Good.
We talked about Quixo and how he has a pair of socks with his face on it that he owns, and then they donate a pair. So somewhere out in the world, there are Quixo the Adventurer socks that have been donated that somebody owns potentially.
That's really funny.
So if they aren't owned, they're somewhere that one could go on a hunt to find. We talk a lot about Keyforge. If you're listening to the podcast and don't know what Keyforge is, we just talk about the basics. We talk about how he got into the LCS team at Fantasy Flight. We did the famous rolling doubles lightning round, in which I had to think on the spot questions because I wrote them in my notebook and I forgot my notebook. But our standard questions, Jacob Affair still applied.
Good.
We talk about my hair.
It sounds like a riveting interview. I'm really excited to listen to it.
Yeah, rate it. Smash that like if you really nice hair.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well, obviously.
So, yeah. And then next month, I've recorded a podcast with Gates Dowd, who is the marketing wizard. That is her official title with Floodgate Games. So literally, she has a wand, and she runs around and taps the wand on her phone and makes Floodgate tweets appear.
That's really cute.
Yeah. So that was a really awesome interview. She was hardcore into Magic the Gathering. Like, just a little preview. Like, she was into Magic the Gathering, and it's really fun to hear her story about how she came to be into the scene, and it's just how sometimes life can work that leads you into a place that just ends up becoming what you always wanted to do. So something to look out for February, because each month we want to showcase an interview from industry professionals. So she's going to be our February, and I have literally 1, 2, 3 more lined up literally until March, April, May, till May. Theoretically, we're on the ball, man.
Beautiful. Thank you for carrying this podcast, buddy.
No problem, friend. Do you have anything else to say?
I'm going to go to bed.
It's late.
It's super late. But hey, I did not take an energy drink tonight, and
Good for you.
I did just fine.
We did both do fine, aside from the fact that I'm semi-talk whispering.
It's fine. It's fine. It's totally fine.
Turn me up.
I'm gonna turn you way up. I'm just gonna put a thumping bass behind you, so it sounds like you're doing it intentional, and just gonna have a lot of energy behind it.
Speaking of, not speaking of thumping, where do they find you at Twitter?
I don't know. I kind of stopped Twitter. I don't know.
You don't like Twitter?
I don't. I've had a really bad attitude about social media lately.
Dude, it sucks. It still sucks. Sorry, folks. It's a lot of hard. It's hard work, especially now that we have your own, and then you have to think of something witty for both Rolling Doubles Twitter and your own Twitter. It's come on, man. Ain't nobody got time for that.
I don't want to live on social media. But I don't know if we can thrive as a podcast without doing social media, but I have no desire to do it.
Don't worry, I just hired you on your sultry voice. I'll do everything else. And your
my plan is working perfectly.
Your sultry voice and your editing skills.
Sort of. There's been a couple episodes where we've had surprise music in the middle of the episode, so you're welcome, audience.
No problem. Anyways, Twitter at Roll Doubles. Facebook at Rolling Doubles Podcast, I think. Rolling Doubles. Yep. And we're on Tumblr.
We're not on Tumblr.
We're on Tumblr where we post a lot of weird GIFs.
It's just weird GIFs. And it was nude GIFs of me until they stopped posting pornography. So.
Right? Yep. Yeah. So sorry, folks, for everyone that was interested. The whole, one of you, which is basically your own wife. Never mind. She can see free gifts of you every night.
Every night.
I never want to see you in real life.
Never. It's not gonna happen.
It's just.
There's no point.
There's no point.
There's not even. There's a good chance I'm not wearing pants right now.
There's a good chance. I don't want to see you stand up either. I'm gonna hang up this phone call. This has just evolved into just a mess.
Have a good night, everyone. It's
Yep.
been a pleasure. This is Jacob Russell signing off.
I'm not signing off yet. Yeah, I'm just gonna stall talk to each
Oh my gosh. What's great is that no one listens this far. Okay, if there is someone who listens this far and they tell me that they've listened this far, I will.
Dude, give him a game from your game
Ooh.
pile.
I should give them a game from my game pile.
Yes, it's a giveaway.
We're gonna give you a giveaway.
Actually, I think I'm seriously gonna think about doing a giveaway. Like when I get my copy of Mysterious Manor, I'll probably end up giving that away. Like a serious
Ooh.
one. And I want there to be we edit in like a secret code word, and whoever can, like, no one, it's like people could jump to the end of the podcast and get the secret code word. Like it has to be like super like in the middle.
Yeah.
And so like they really need to like pay attention. Will you do that?
What game?
Will you do that? Will you give them like would you give them a board game?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Yeah. Yes, I will give them a board game.
Okay. So if you listen to this,
it cannot be my buddy Derek, because he definitely listens to every episode. No, it totally can. If he does, I'll test him. Derek, if you're listening to this and you're the first one.
Is there like a keyword? Tell them the keyword.
Ooh, the keyword is schnozberries.
Schnozberries? I was going to say thin cardboard.
Oh my gosh, what a terrible joke. Like, I had nothing come to my head at all.
Thin cardboard is our Z name.
Because it's paper. It's so clever.
God damn.
This is so dumb.
This is the dumbest thing we've ever done.
I'm not editing this out.
No.
We're going to push this puppy to an hour and a half.
No.
I'm going to bed.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening. Please actually just unsubscribe from us at this point.
Can you,
I mean, this is
I'd appreciate if our listener count went down, actually.
Yeah, that
I
would
think I
be
understand.
surprising. Actually,
what?
I was gonna say that because I have my board game geek picture as our logo, some guy, because I'm selling games on there too. Some guy was like, "Hey, I'm going through your podcast. I'm on Dropping a Deuce." And I'm like,
What?
I was like, "Oh, sweet man! Like, thank you. That's super awesome." So
That's amazing.
yeah.
Well,
So
to
thank
that
you, guy. Now you're gonna unsubscribe from us.
The keyword is schnozberries.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening and hanging in there. Please leave a like or drop a like, and that'll be it. Come see us next week, where we won't be around, but the week after,
we totally will.
We'll probably do episode 18 as long as we haven't met each other, which will still probably be the case.
To all of our listeners, I love you inappropriately.
Oh, gross.
No, that's not what I meant. Jeez, what did you go to? Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for listening. Music intro is Sivu Play by Fantastic Plastic Machine, and music bumpers were created by myself using Apple Loops and GarageBand for iOS. Join us next week as we continually cry for help in another episode of Rolling Doubles Podcast.